Hi everyone, it's Ardith, and today is release day at ellenhudson.com. This release by Julie is full of Halloween and holiday goodies, and I know you're going to love it. Today the design ambassadors are participating in a blog hop. I've got all the details on my blog, so use the link below to check it out. I made a simple double shaker card with two of the cutest ghosts around. I started with some ink blending on a panel of plain white cardstock. To create my spooky night scene, I used one of the landscapes dies and some 2-inch post-it tape to create some masks. I placed the first mask on the panel to blend the ground, and I made sure to keep the other side of the tape to use for my sky later. I also added more tape above the mask so that I wouldn't get the wrong ink in the wrong area by mistake. I grabbed my Catherine Pooler ink in Spruce. This dark green is great for the ground in a night scene. It's dark and rich. I used a life-changing blender brush and quickly put down ink all over. Didn't worry about a smooth, even blend. I just put down as much color as I could. This ink smooths out as it dries. When I had the ink down, I moved the mask so I could create some layers of ink and more interest in the ground. By going over the ink, I created more depth of color and some rolling hills. I moved the mask a couple of times, and then it was time for the night sky. I started with melon ice. I know, that's not what you were expecting, is it? But this light yellow-green will give a ghostly glow to my sky, so I put down quite a bit of it just along the horizon before moving into the deeper colors. Next up, suede shoes, which is one of my all-time favorite colors. It's dark but still bright, if that makes sense, and I often use it as my darkest color for a daytime sky and my lightest color for a nighttime sky. I took it down to the melon ice and I went over that area lightly so that it started to look like it's glowing. Next, I added some Queen for a Day. This is a deep, rich purple that gives the suede shoes some darkness. And finally, I added some blackjack to make it a little less blue. Now at this point, it's not terribly smooth, but you'll see how it improves with time. Oops, I didn't have that mask in quite the right place. No problem. I'll just put the mask back in place and then go over that specific area with some of the suede shoes ink until it blends a bit better. Next, I added some texture and interest to the sky by replacing the mask and using my distress sprayer to spritz big drops of water over top. This bottle allows you to control the size of the spritz by either squeezing the trigger halfway for bigger drops or all the way for a finer mist. I waited for a minute and then I lifted the water and some of the color with a clean paper towel. This also develops as it dries. Next, I used the pumpkin stamp from the new Ware 4 set to add a few pumpkins to the ground. I put the mask back in place so that the pumpkins would look like they were in amongst the hills I had created with the ink blending. I stamped them with spruce ink for a tone-on-tone look. They're not my focal image of the card, just a little added detail. And I stamped onto a post-it note to create a mask, but I used an easier method, which you'll see in just a sec. See? Yep, I just ripped off a curved part of my mask and I used it. Sometimes laziness is the right answer, or at least it's good enough. Next, I used some very muted Copic markers to color the pumpkins. Again, I don't really want them drawing attention away from the ghosts, but adding a bit of subtle color just adds a bit of interest to these supporting images. I used Y24 as my orange and E55 as my brown for the stems. And I had no issue coloring on that blended Catherine Pooler ink and no smudges with the images stamped with the Catherine Pooler ink. This ink is so versatile in this way. And now finally, it's time for the ghosts. These are two of the adorable characters in the new Happy Haunting set. So many perfect Halloween images. I'm starting with the dies, though, to create my shaker windows. I placed them in the sky and taped them down with purple tape. I like to place the purple tape on the part of the cut that won't be used, so in this case on the inside, just in case there's any stickiness left behind when I remove the tape. Then I ran the panel through my Gemini Junior, and here's what I got. Now instead of acetate, I decided to use vellum for my shaker window. I think this gives a more ghostly look to these spooky cute guys. I just used a tape runner to glue it to the back of the panel over the two windows. And then I got out my mini Misty and I secured the panel with my magnets so that I could position the two stamps inside the windows before picking them up with the Misty door. I used black Stays-On ink. This ink works well on shiny or non-porous surfaces without smudging. I'm not sure if I really needed to use it here or if other black inks would have worked, but this worked fine. For my sentiment, I got out the parcel box die set and I chose this little fishtail banner. I often find that the bigger die sets are good value because they have lots of little dies that can be used along with the bigger dies or on their own on other cards like I did here. I cut it from white cardstock and then I put it on my Misty. I chose a cute little sentiment from Pumpkin to Talk About and I stamped it with VersaFine Onyx ink. I trimmed it down to fit on the card with a pair of scissors and then it was time to build my shaker walls. I won't subject you to watching the whole thing, but I do have a couple of tips. First, double up your foam tape. This gives your shaker filler much more space to move around freely. I usually just cut off a strip and fold it in half, and I always cut off the fold because it doesn't really lie flat under the panel, and who needs that, right? My next tip is this: keep your shaker walls as small as possible around the window. This means that your shaker filler won't be able to hide between the panel and the card base, and will always be visible. You can cut the tape up into shapes to mimic the shape of the window. There's lots of curves on these little guys, and I use lots of triangles of tape to approximate the curves. And if it looks like a hot mess like this one does, don't worry, only you and I will ever know. Now for my shaker filler. I chose some Pretty Pink Posh jewels from the Citrus mix. I love these mixes. You get different colors and different sizes, which adds lots of interest to a shaker, but it also gives you the flexibility of choosing exactly what you want. I chose these kind of ghostly green jewels. They don't actually glow in the dark, but they look like they might, especially behind the translucent vellum window. It did take me a bit of time to build up the amount of jewels I needed, but I got there. I used this little tray to help me tip them into each of the shaker windows. Now, some people can just remove the release paper at this point and put the card base on straight and centered, but I'm not one of them. I find it easier just to use a piece of white cardstock that is cut smaller than the panel. It does add another layer to the card, but it's so much less stressful than trying to remove the shaker and straighten it out while keeping all the jewels in the right place. And I'm all for less stress while card making. See how those jewels almost glow through the window? I just added a ton of tape runner to the back of the shaker panel and I adhered it to a plain white card base. And then I added my popped up sentiment strip to the front. I hope you like my little ghosties. I'll have more videos this month with some of the other new products from this release. Be sure to use the link below to head over to my blog for all the hop details, including prize information. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up below and subscribe to my channel for more inspiration. Product links are below in the description and also on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.